All right, so here we are with the great invitation conversations with my friend Paul Kervick from Vermont. My name is John Michael Dumais. I'm in New Hampshire. It's May 6, 2021, and it's been a while since we've connected and lots of water under the bridge. Paul, how are you over there in the great state of Vermont?
Yeah, well, we seem to be hanging in fine here, and it helps a lot having the change into spring and some sunshine, flowers coming up. But it does feel like we're in a time of. It's almost like we've used the analogy before. It's the pause before the great push, And I'm seeing how that's playing out, and I'm looking forward to kind of just weaving together with you and having some conversation about that.
Okay, good.
Yeah, but things are fine here. Thank you.
All right. Well, that's good. And yeah, we're still pushing forward here in New Hampshire in terms of trying to educate people. It seems to have become, from at least one point of view, increasingly Orwellian, sort of the upside down world of, further mandates around, different schools and organizations requiring the V. I'll just call it the V. People know what I'm talking about by saying
Yeah.
V.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's some concern that people are not understanding that this is, an emergency use authorization V. It's not approved formally by the FDA, and therefore nobody can be forced to take it. In fact, the one of the CDC's persons, I think her name was Amy Cohn or something like that, said that no, you can't be forced to take it, and everyone needs to be given the right to refuse, and hospitals and organizations can't force anyone to take it simply because it's still in trials and it's not proven safe. There's no way it can be proven safe after a year or less of trials.
Right.
And not only that, but it's been shown to be highly unsafe. I don't know who it was that said, the universe is an intelligence test. I can't remember who that was.
Yeah.
I think it might have been Timothy Leary. I think I may have mentioned it before with you. And the crazier the things come down. I mean, the more I feel like they're just asking for sane people to stand up and say, no, that's enough now.
Mhm.
Let's go on with things, or let's have a conversation about things. And there's so many good doctors and scientists, immunologists, virologists, others who are like saying, no, this is crazy. You need to stop this. Even if you just look at the death counts on the vaccine adverse events reporting system, it's over 3,500 now, over 12,000 serious injuries, something like, I think it's 80,000 reports.
Right.
EU, there's twice as many deaths reported, 350,000 reports, I think there. And we know that from historical studies that the system only gets about 1% of what the actual events are actually captured there.
Mhm.
And that's because it's voluntary and passive. And we've had people, for example, here in the great state of New Hampshire, and we're in my county, Cheshire County, we had 7 deaths, I think, all year from attributed to CV-19. And then on December 30th, they started a V program in the long-term care facilities here, and 26 deaths ensued rapidly on already in the first few months of 2021. And I've had people looking for those in the system and they can't find them. So nobody's reporting a lot of these. They're just not being reported. And, and I need to be clear with people, as a good critical thinker, that no one is saying that all of these deaths are absolutely connected to the V, and correlation is not causation. We all know that. But the fact is that about the deaths reported so far exceed the deaths reported in the prior 10 years to the VAERS system from all Vs combined. So it's interesting to note, obviously, with millions being given out, you would expect a number of deaths, but that's also true with the flu shot.
Let me ask you a question, because I ran across a statistic the other day, which was phenomenal to me, by a top vaccine research doctor.
Oh, you said that word.
Speaking out. Oh, sorry about that. There goes our YouTube. we're speaking in a good way.
Yes,
But
yes.
but he's very experienced. He's won all kinds of awards, top, 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 top. And one of the questions he has is a grounded critical thinker
Yeah.
is on any other V in history, all of them, if there's more than, I think he said 50 deaths or 25 deaths, it's automatically removed.
Yeah, I
They
think
can't use
it's
it anymore.
yeah. That was Peter McCullough was
Yeah,
talking,
thank you. Yes, Peter.
and he said 5 deaths. They would put a warning on the package.
A black box thing, a warning. Yeah, could cause death.
Yeah,
And then after 25, I think, then they have to pull it.
Yeah,
So-
it's actually 50 is the cutoff, I believe,
Yeah, so
for,
here
for
the
actually pulling
CDC
it. Yeah.
own statistics. What they're reporting is COVID attributed.
Yeah.
Is way. I mean, what is going on? There's
Yeah,
a huge
it's
question here.
the fact that there's no independent body is really the biggest problem. I mean, if you want to overcome what's often called is the hesitancy, and there's a great push to pressure those who are labeled as anti-vaxxers or vaccine hesitant. If you want to make them more suspicious, do what you're doing.
Yeah.
Do exactly what you're doing, and you'll make people more suspicious. If you have that many deaths, and apparently the FDA looked into the first 1,600 and said, nothing to see here, move along now. Well, nobody believes that there's nothing to see. And the reality is that the 25% of those deaths happen within 48 hours of the V,
Right.
including many the same day. And then 40% of the deaths total happen when the person gets ill within 48 hours of the V. So there's something there to see. And then, of course, we're seeing these unusual symptoms, thrombocytopenia, which is low blood platelet counts, and you're seeing severe allergic reactions in multiple thousands of people. Over 8,000 people have been reported to have been hospitalized. So it's severe enough that they need to be put in a hospital right away. So, I mean, nobody's saying here, take or don't take. We're saying,
right.
Informed consent.
Do your research.
Yeah, informed consent. This is what by law. Now this is legally required by law. They need to tell you, by law. They need to tell you before they give you the injection. They need to tell you what the benefits are, and they need to tell you what the risks are. And the risks, they should be telling you, what the reporting system has reported. They should be saying this many deaths have been reported, this many injuries have been reported. They should tell you the type of injuries have been reported, because they need to tell you if you're going to be engaging yourself in a medical experiment, this is what that is. It's a medical experiment, what the risks and benefits are. And on the benefit side, or on the risk side, they also need to tell you not only the risk from the V, but they need to tell you the risk from not the V, from not taking the V, which is to say, what is your risk? Right. And we all heard that Joe Rogan got smashed by the mainstream narrative when he had the temerity to suggest that if you're, young person, say under 20 or something, that maybe you don't need to, maybe you're healthy. And we know that those people have a 99.997% likelihood of survival, even if they contract the dreaded COVID. And therefore, if all these, and we also know that the people succumbing to some of these adverse reactions are on the younger side compared to those succumbing to COVID-19, which are people. Let's say the average, I think, is something like 78 years old, which is life expectancy, and people with high comorbidity. And when it's younger people, they tend to have other major health issues. So anyway, I don't want to belabor this because we talked about it.
No, we've kind of.
It's just that it goes on, and there's an assault on critical thinking, and it's like you are not allowed to say anything at all. And Tucker Carlson rightly had a program on this last night, basically saying we need to be able to ask these questions in any modern civilization that professes to have any kind of democratic, for the people government. And the very fact that the NIH has a financial stake, for example, in the Moderna V, they get money from that. The fact that scientists at the CDC, people at the CDC get money through the sale of Vs, and they're a V company. That's what they are.
Even Fauci,
they're a public health
he's
company,
getting paid on every
they're
vaccine.
Not. And the FDA is not a public health company either, and none of them are treating physicians. So, when they try to tell a physician that you can't use hydroxychloroquine or whatever it is, they're stepping way outside of their normal bounds, and they're doing this for the first time. Physicians have always used things that they thought could work. They've always used those things in what's called an off-label utilization, which is for something new. That if it's worked before, they use it again. And the fact is that there have been papers published and known by the NIH and NIAID, which is National Institute for Allergy and Infectious Diseases, which Fauci is the head of, and they've known about ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine for decades. These things are standard medicines. They're on the list of the WHO's list of essential medicines, and they've been known since at least the mid 2000s that they're extremely effective against viruses. They've known
I've
that.
seen a number of doctors treating patients with them who's got like 80% of the people recover fine at home. The other 20 recover and don't die. I mean, a number of doctors who are actually treating real COVID patients using those. Said this
and the individual you mentioned before, Dr. Peter McCullough, has gone before the Texas Senate and other places, and to talk about, and he's probably the most cited. He may be one of the most cited COVID doctors right now. Saying that early treatment is the way to go.
Yes,
it saves people. And what's really, what really is strange and terrible to think about is that the guidance coming out of the NIH was to stay at home. If you stay at home and wait till your symptoms get worse, if you get symptoms, precisely the opposite of what they should be telling people. And places that have these home kits, the people are doing well. We know that India was giving out kits with ivermectin that cost something like $2.89. Now we all know that they've had a surge, but it's hard to say whether that's related to the V, because we know that there have been a lot of what's called breakthrough cases. In other words, when I say breakthrough, I want you to hear the word oops, because it's people taking the V and still getting sick from COVID.
Well, we had a nursing home locally here where 100% of the people got vaccinated, V, and I think half of them ended up, or no more, 2/3 of them ended up getting COVID. So,
and we know that it's not a V. It's not really a V. It's actually a gene therapy, and it's not V because a typical V, to remind people, has a bit of the pathogen in it. So a little bit of the pathogen with an adjuvant to like supercharge your immune response. Recognize this thing here. It's part of this measles or part of this rubella or whatever. Recognize that and develop some antibody response. So next time you see it, your immune system will be primed. But not with the mRNA Vs, because they only have part of this. The only part of the pathogen they have is the spike protein, which is the part that links into your system. It's not. Well, it wasn't believed to be the payload. It was just like the little latch, right? The latch, and then once it's latched on, the payload gets delivered. Well, it seems the Salk Institute this past week, or actually, I think it was maybe as early as about a month ago, published a report. This is the Salk Institute, okay? Published a report saying, oh, by the way, all by itself, that spike protein is harmful to your health, because what it does is when it latches on, it degrades your cells' capacity to recharge themselves, and then it causes the onrush of the symptoms that we've been seeing, which is a vascular disease, disease of the blood system, and not a respiratory disease, which does match quite well with what we've been hearing from doctors around the world, and why, for example, things like ventilators were not the proper treatment, and a lot of people died unnecessarily on ventilators because it wasn't their lungs capacity, it was their blood's capacity to uptake hemoglobin. Anyways, it's what we're trying to say to people is, you are sovereign. We're moving from them out there are the authorities. They're going to tell you everything that's true and what's real and what to do, and the whole MDD thing too. No, you're the authority. You can certainly listen to these people, but don't just listen to one. Listen to a range of people talking about it. And when the mainstream starts to criminalize people talking about vitamin D and vitamin C and zinc and these other things, then it becomes you take notice. And somebody was talking about the Taiwanese who are not part of mainland China, and believe
Right.
themselves to be a separate country. China does not believe they're a separate country,
Right.
but they have their own
Yeah.
government. And what I heard them say about it was they carefully monitor what China censors, because they know that there's truth there. Whatever is censored
Yeah.
is what they don't want to get out. So people just remember that whatever they're censoring is what people don't want to have get out. And
Right.
now they forced Mercola to take down his vitamin D and vitamin C and zinc and all his articles on that, because he's
Yep.
apparently been personally threatened in some
Yes.
way, which is, this is now we're getting into problems. We have the Center for Countering Digital Hate, which is a UK organization, now saying that he's a kind of like a terrorist,
Terrorist, I know.
and that people like Dr. Christiane Northrup and others like her, it's like, are you serious? I mean, you've got to start checking your critical thinking capacity if you're going down that way. And are you signing up to be a medical experiment? Just ask yourself, is that something you're willing to do? And the fact that half of healthcare workers aren't going to sign up for the V, and a lot of military aren't signing up, and prison workers, I heard, weren't signing up, and in great numbers, like at least half. So it's like, these people are doing their research. Perhaps it's time for you to do your research. And I'll say one more thing before I pass it over to you. And that is, if people aren't checking out the High Wire, they ought to be. Last week, there was an episode with 3 women who are all frontline healthcare workers, who all jumped in line first to take the V.
Right.
And they all had very detrimental and ongoing neurological symptoms, which caused all of them to have uncontrollable shakes. In this interview from last week, they were all still shaking, and not as badly, but you'll see videos in which they had uncontrollable convulsions, which come and go apparently. And the sad part is this all happened very soon after they took the V, and their insurance companies, the hospitals, their employers, and the government all said, see you later. You're on your own.
Walked away.
You're absolutely on your own. So, people, be aware of what's happening. You have people like Dr. Michael Yeadon, former chief science officer of Pfizer, saying
Pfizer,
this. He's very concerned and believes that there's no other reason than depopulation. I know that sounds tinfoil hat.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I know that it sounds that way. No one is expecting you to just take my word for it or believe anything, but just understand they don't have your health in mind. There's some other agenda going on. And when we know that there are therapeutics available that can reduce hospitalizations and deaths by maybe 85%, and that most people are not susceptible to begin with, we know that there's some other agenda happening.
Yeah.
So I think part of the question here is, how do we advance critical thinking? And then also, how do we, and this is kind of where we started, Paul, before we started recording, is, how do we then manage this information? Because it's very upsetting, and I don't want to come to the world with my hair on fire, in offering a possibility. It's so concerning that it's difficult not to. So, talk me off the ledge here, Paul.
Well, I always like to start with where we're at. And I think you did a wonderful summary of kind of where we are at this moment in time in terms of this whole arena. And it's still consuming probably 90% or more of people's consciousness. And I guess the burning question that has come up for me is, I believe that rather than reacting, which is based in that paradigm of separation, right and wrong, reaction kind of perpetuates that polarity. Is, what can I do? What can you, John Michael, do? What can we offer to our audience here to consider that will allow them to create peace within themselves, an energy field that actually can help dissipate a lot of the fear around them, to be able to deal in a more whole, peaceful way when there's confrontation or disagreement. And again, I look at everything as an opportunity and a gift. And so I'm seeing on one level, the world in this separation phase of control, of lockdown, of fear. And that seems to have been continuing to increase. However, what's encouraging to me is at the same time I'm witnessing and seeing a rise in people that are just saying, wait a minute, hold on. This isn't making some sense, or this isn't feeling right. And the feeling is what I'm going for. We're so mentally oriented in our culture. And this ties back to something we've shared in an earlier podcast, where we come into this world as pure creator beings. In that first 7 years, where we're totally open to spirit, we can see angels, we're into creativity, joy, creating, exploring. We're totally unprogrammed, if you will. And then the programming starts, and we start developing our avatar with beliefs. And that's a function of things separate from us, whether it's parents, friends, school, government, military, it's all out there. And so what I'm optimistic about is I'm seeing the full manifestation of that now. And at the same time, the opportunity for that to collapse, which I think it is. I can feel it. And as one more person is able to focus in their heart, which is much greater in terms of what it can do for their well-being than their brain and their mind. But this constant fear, the constant stress, the constant mind control, programming, the masks, all of that is keeping people in this increasing state of stress. And I've read some research, wonderful research on mind control through MK Ultra, through our government, CIA, through what the Nazis did in Germany. And it was a constant keeping people in a stressful situation. Then all of a sudden, we're going to relax. You can go to the bathroom once a day. So, we have freedom. People relax a little bit. And then all of a sudden, boom, the next restriction, the next. And that pattern is what I see playing out right now. If people were really to honestly just look at their own lives and see when do they take a deep breath and feel relaxed, and then the next news cycle comes on, and boom, you're tense again.
Right.
And that keeps you in a disempowered place, a place that isn't who you are, this eternal source creator being. You're capable to create the life you want.
Right.
But it keeps you in this dependence, in this separation, and in this fear.
Yeah.
So my interest here, and the whole reason I love doing these with you, is if we can help invite or encourage people to perhaps just take a breath, take a pause, and let's look at some of these factors. And I'd like to share a little bit. And I'm hoping that maybe at the end of this, John Michael, when we get a chance to, you do all the nice editing and put it together, I'd love to, if we could, include a link to something I'm going to share about. And it came to me when I said, what is the one burning important thing that all of us can do at this time that have the greatest impact, the greatest influence on helping shift the reality that we all find ourselves in this 3D reality. And that, to me, is to take time out from our overthinking, notice our emotions, sit quietly, whether best in nature if possible, but even just sitting quietly and taking a couple of deep breaths, and focus on your heart. One of my heroes in life, and a fellow who I got to had the honor to do some training with, along with my wife Winsong, was Greg Brady. And Greg has put out all kinds of material on the internet. Anyone can Google him, and pretty much anything he does is really worthy. He and Zach Bush are two of my favorites. But Greg has one that came out recently that I'm going to be putting in this little weekly email I send out this week. And it was so simple and well done, but to me, it just resonated with every cell in my body. And he's talking about the power of our hearts. And all of what's playing out, everything we've been talking about, it gets us all up here in our heads, or in our fight and flight, the reptilian brain. And everyone thinks, yeah, but we're beliefs in our mind, and we have to figure everything out. That's not who we are. That's a part of our being. It's a mechanical device. It's part of our being. Our heart is what has that connection to soul, to source. And our heart actually has more, I think he said 40,000 of these special little, what do you call them, sensory neurites, 40,000 of cells in your heart. And they sit right up at the top. would the valves open and close? And as I was watching this and listening to him, I was thinking of our birth canal analogy, and the breath that we take. Each breath is a new opportunity. So we let go of the stress, we take in healing, or we take in nurturing. And so these 40,000 cells basically are connected to all the neurons throughout our whole system. We have 75,000 miles in the average person of microcirculation where our blood flows. And as our heart is, people at HeartMath, if people want to do the research HeartMath Institute. They're fantastic. They've done all kinds of scientific, documented research. If you are able to sit quietly and breathe into your heart, and if you watch the old Native Americans or the shamans in many cultures around the world, when they sit quietly to meditate, often you see, I don't know if you can see my hand, it just comes up in flat palm on the heart, or a couple of fingers. They go right to the heart. They knew. And it's at that place where we're connected to all life, all nature, the source of who we are. Those neurons are connected to all life. And so if you can focus there, breathe there, get to that place of peace, and then focus on something that is loving. It could be thinking about, not from a fear place, a loving experience you had. One of the most powerful ones that Greg talks about a lot, and I've talked about a lot, is gratitude. Just getting into that feeling of gratitude, and notice what happens within your being. And so I guess what I'm going to invite, and I'd love to hear your take on this too, because you've shared some powerful things that have happened when you've been downtown and these negative protesters are coming by. And I know the reaction is, you call me an asshole, well, you're an asshole, or, get the V, don't get the V. If we were able to shift our whole energy field, and you can do this without saying anything, into that place of calm and peace, then you're connected to everything, including that person who's in their own fear, in their own judgment, in their own violent kind of behavior. It's going to lessen it. And guess what? That energy you're putting out is going to touch everybody else. It's going to touch all the plants. It absolutely is going to do this scientifically. It's been proven. So let's see if we can consider, or ask people to consider, shifting how they're going through their daily lives and taking a little time here and there. Just try that. What do you think? I mean, that's what I've come to at the moment.
Well, I've often used the phrase where you're going is equivalent or determined by where you're coming from. So where you're coming from is where you're going. We tend to think of, well, what do I need to do? It's like, well, if you're attending to your come from, then you'll have a sense of what you're offering and where you're ultimately going, because it's determined by your thoughts and feelings. Exactly. I mean, it's a fascinating endeavor. And just going back to your earlier comment about protesting. So we've been protesting on Central Square in Keene, protesting, picketing, I guess, is maybe a better way, with just messages for people to understand and recognize that there's another agenda, another narrative possible, another world is possible, right? And I've been asking people when they get, the middle finger response, which happens maybe 20% of the time, versus, positive accolades from people driving around the square, to just say either thank you or I love you, or come and talk, or, kind of thing. But thank you and I love you, when you shout it out, it's actually, you're putting out a very powerful energy into the universe. It's like, we're not here to make anybody wrong. We don't want to make anybody feel bad. And inherently there's even if we're meaning well, some of what we're saying or projecting is going to hit people as a negative, or as an affront to their understanding. And we understand that, but what we're trying to do is get people engaged in conversation. And what's interesting,
building connections when we're living in a land of separation. That's spiritual work. We're trying to build connections.
Ultimately, which is why, and I think you and I have had this discussion before, why the many to many or the one to many may not be as effective as the one-on-one or the one-to-one. And there's been a lot of stories that I've heard of people just talking to their neighbor, or maybe going into a store without a face mask on or whatever the case may be, and that and encouraging conversation, encouraging other people to maybe follow through with their own heart's knowing, getting back to the heart,
Mhm.
because I think if we check in, we can see that there is a fear-based narrative being offered to us and a love-based narrative being offered to us. Always, every minute, we can move into one or the other. And even if we're meaning well, and I point to myself for this, I recognize that some of what I'm offering into the world is fear, and it's fear now. It's coming from a little bit of a higher place, but I can see that I'm still, my concern can easily, the vibration can easily drop down
Mm.
into those people trying to control you, because that's what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, when I remember who I am, I want to go into, hey, it's all good news. I want to break into song and say, hey, your body is wonderful and it can handle almost anything. And, there's a lot of good here, a lot of good news in terms of what we're really capable of dealing with in terms of viruses and other things. We're made of viruses. Those who, we've encouraged people to listen to Zach Bush, who, has, I think, perhaps one of the more sane takes on what's going on.
Yeah.
But even with that sanity, there's an understanding that there are some very difficult things that are very urgent things that we need to attend to, which have a lot to do with the way we're allowing our world to be poisoned,
Mhm.
and through things like glyphosate and GMOs and bad stuff in fossil fuels that are being put in the air,
And
beyond just the CO2, or even instead of, and things that we're allowing to happen. Particulate air pollution seems to be very highly correlated to troubling symptoms coming on with SARS-CoV-2. So the news is always good. The news is ultimately good, but you're not going to hear it if we're stuck in the 3D world of fear, and
right. We're in this.
and people are not going to be able to hear it either if we're just trying to oppose. And so this
Yeah.
is why
Right.
there's a balance here to be struck of the world we're saying no to, but if we're not turning right around and saying there's another world we're saying yes to, and unfortunately the good news never gets the marquee, right? It's not what you see on the 6 o'clock news. When's the last time you saw good news there? So I think it behooves us to and this again comes back to what you're talking about just slowing down and taking a breath. And I need to be reminded, and I'll for example, I'll just share this anecdote before I throw it over to you again. I tend to be, a somewhat impatient driver for no good reason, except that I know where I want to go, and everyone's like that. And people, as I've been reminded to take a breath now, as the cars go by that I'm waiting for, I'm breathing.
Mm.
I'm like, and that's like the anti-impatience drug. It's like
What a
better than any.
transformative.
It's
Yeah.
it's better than any drug, because it's like all of a sudden, then when it's my turn, I'm not in any hurry, and I'm happy and I'm calm and I feel at peace. There's nothing that needs to happen, and so it's just a reminder. Our come from is so huge. It's so powerful. And if I'm leaving the house in a hurry and thinking I have all this stuff on my brain that I want to say or do, that's not actually peaceful, even if it's all just neutral. And I'm not judging any of that. It's just like, so I'll pass it back to you. It's just saying, yeah, that's the opportunity here. And it seems inconsequential. It seems minor, but it's
Well,
actually the
it's
very opposite, isn't it?
it's huge. You ever heard of homeopathy?
I have heard of homeopathy. Yes, exactly. Yes.
A
A little
little
dabble.
bit.
Is that a little dabble, do you? Is that
Yeah.
or in this
But
case, a submicroscopic, can't even find it, vibrational dabble, do you?
there are some wonderful experiments that have been done over the years in different places where there are war zones, where you'll have people just focused meditation from their heart space, holding that frequency. And they've measured this and they've seen the impact that's had. So I want to encourage all of our listeners here and remind you and me both the power that each of us has is beyond what we may think. It's not just about affecting that person in front of us or that group right there. Because as we're able to maintain this practice of heart-centered focus and living in that frequency goes out and touches all life on this planet and beyond. It honestly does. And they don't want, I don't think, the powers that be, they love to keep us in the fear and the separation and duking it out. And, oh, now we'll get elected the Democrats, and then everything will be fine. Now we'll get the Republicans and everything will be fine. Guess what, folks? This is the great invitation. This is the great wake up. And if you track any of the ancient religions, any of the great esoteric teachings, you look, they talked about this time of awakening, this time of transformation. It's time for humanity. So we've almost had to create the total separation from life and love. So it's so obvious, it's hitting us in the face. We're bleeding here. But the opportunity is to remember who we are and to love each other. And the things you've done that are good, the things you've done that are bad, it's all part of you. You're beautiful. You're absolutely fine just how you are. The guy that's throwing the finger, I've thrown the finger. I mean, it doesn't make him a bad person, okay? So to enter your heart space and to live in that awareness, that consciousness, each breath, I mean, it's a huge practice, but it becomes easier, like you were saying in the traffic. It totally transforms the thing that you used to find, at the end of the day, you're kind of shaking and pissed off and someone cut you off, and you notice there's a difference now when you're driving. Wow. Because just the breath, the simple thing of breathing. And one of the things that has been suggested through Qigong and yoga and other practices, and Greg speaks about this in this video, I hope we'll be able to post there. When you're breathing in, if you can touch your heart or hold your hand here, so your focus is there. That helps the body and say, okay, we're focusing on the heart now, getting out of the head.
Right.
But as you're breathing in, if you do that, say to a count of 3, 5, 6, whatever, I like Tesla numbers. So I breathe into 6 and then breathe out slower to a count of 9. And you'll find yourself immediately, the tension, the stress, the mind quiets. You move into that heart space and you're feeling some gratitude or you're feeling love. And just, however much time you have, it could be 3 minutes, it could be 5 minutes. And throughout your day, if all of a sudden you're feeling engaged with, the drama, give yourself the gift. You're in charge of you. Give yourself that gift of a few minutes for you to get yourself back in that infinite creator space. It's going to feel lovely to you. So you can be walking through chaos, I'm serious here, and still be at peace. Still be at peace.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, if one or more people do that, it doubles, triples, it quadruples. I mean, think of the Fibonacci series. I mean, it goes out infinitely.
Yeah.
It doesn't take that many people to shift the whole consciousness on this planet. I'm absolutely serious about this. So when I say, what can we do now? How can these conversations help people perhaps get to that kind of place in their own life? I think that's the greatest invitation we could have, is to consider that, and that is going to help change the things that are going on out there that don't seem to be on our control. But we're the 99%. And if the 99% shift their energy, the 1%, they're going to have no power, no control.
Right. Well, and also if we're modeling the next world, correct?
Yeah.
We are essentially demonstrating just through our presence what's possible. And this isn't about judging where anybody else is at. It's more about caretaking our own vibrational offering, so that when we are engaging with other people, we're coming from the most balanced place possible. And it's not, the whole idea that we can do this easily is not a good expectation. I think we have to expect or understand that we're going to fall off that beam, but it's recognizing that we're falling off, very similar to mindfulness meditation.
Yeah, learning a new tool here.
It's not it's not about not having thoughts. It's about recognizing and being able to track that your thoughts are taking you here, they're taking you there, and to the degree that they take you here and there, it's kind of like the horse without a rider. And to the degree that you can go, oh, that's where it's taking me, you get back on the horse and you're able to manage yourself a lot more easily.
You know,
So, yeah. So,
that's really an important piece. And the other part, excuse me for that, I forgot to take it off the hook. It'll go to answering machine in a second. I think about the phrase, you know, heal or heal thyself. It's not about healing or changing other people's behavior. What you're in charge of, what you're capable of healing is yourself. And if you start there, you're going to be the greatest healer in the world, because you will be in this place of oneness, of healing, of love, of frequency, that just being around you is going to be healing to folks, even without words. I've seen this happen, you know, with a great Qigong practitioner. It is about frequency and energy. And you don't need a course. You don't need, you know, to buy something. This is something you can do in your own home, out in the woods, wherever you are. But it does take a willingness to be open to experiment and see how that works for you. You know, see how it works for you. But I've seen it work in my own life, and I've seen it work in friends' lives. And, you know, if I'm going to be spending all my day out protesting, and this is not a judgment, I could do that. And if my heart's in it and it feels resonant with where my path is, I'll do that. Or if I'm feeling the best use of my time is writing or going out and meditating in nature and putting that frequency out, I'll do that. There's no right or wrong here, but it's about following the heart, to me, and encouraging people that it's simple, and yet it does take practice. And the more you practice, the easier it gets. And that is going to have the greatest impact on our communities in creating, and we've talked before, John Michael, about, you know, we're talking about creating these communities within the community where we can address people's issues. But if we're doing it from that centered heart place, rather than the ego and the mind, and it's my way or the highway. I know, you know, if you're not going to do it this way, well, screw you. How helpful is that? This is the great opportunity to learn as humanity. We're individuals and we're all connected. We're all one. So if that is true, which I certainly believe it is, we get to create this world. And what's been created that we're living through right now wasn't something that we have consciously created.
right.
A few people have done that.
Yeah.
And they've held the strings and the power and the money and the V's and all of that.
Yeah.
So if we're going to change it, which we can easily do, it might take a little time or not. How many are willing to shift how they're approaching their daily life?
Yeah.
Each moment.
And I do think it does take all of us. It does take all of us, or as many of us who are able to, you know, get out and, you know, recognize that we're responsible for the world. You know, we're creating the old
Yes.
Native American phrase, "We are the ones that we've been waiting for," you know, which suggests that we, you know, the projection of authority again on those external others who we, you know, rightly or wrongly believe had our best benefit in mind, do in fact not have our best benefit in mind. And that's okay, because we were always the ones responsible in the first place. But to take back the reins in and of itself is a process, and can be a scary process for many, because inherently, when we're reowning our sovereignty, you know, we are, in a sense, dedicating ourselves to, in one way or another, and in different moments, to a solitary path, right? We are being willing to stand up for what we believe, whether it's quietly in our own hearts, to say, no, I know what I'm going to do with my body, with my future, in terms of the medicines I'm going to take, with the food I eat, you know, with the products that I buy, with the kind of world that I'm inhabiting and encouraging through my choices, or I'm going to believe those other people. And sometimes, again, it's solitary. Sometimes it does require us to stand up and show our faces. I do believe now more than ever, it's important for people. This is just my take, and people can take it for what it's worth.
Yeah.
It's more than ever important that we get up and get out, show our faces, and I mean that in a literal way, without a face diaper on, and show that we're confident in our own biology, confident in our own connection to the universe and to each other, and non-judgmental, which is, I think, the other key part of this, and understanding that we know that people have been, have been conditioned over long periods of time to believe in the medical establishment or believe what they're being told by people on TV, on the mainstream media, or governments or corporations. But nobody, even if they had your best benefit in mind, right? Even if you, Paul, had my best benefit in mind, that doesn't mean I should say, okay, so tell me what to do, Paul. What should I do? It's like if you're in right relationship to me, you'll be encouraging me to make my own decisions,
Yes.
to think for myself, and certainly if I'm down in the dirt, if you're down in the dirt, I would hope that you would lift a
reach out a hand and offer.
And whether I take that hand is still up to me. It's just an
offer. Exactly.
You're not going to like take me by the shoulders and lift me up unless I'm in imminent danger of being run over by a car. And so this is the place that I think I find most difficult right now. And maybe you can again talk me off the ledge a little bit. And that is, I do have the perception that people are about to be run over by a car with this faux medication that's not a V. That's my point of view on it. And there's a lot of science backing it up, and a lot of very pro-V scientists are going, oh, wait a minute, no, you need to take this off the market immediately. We need to have conversations. And at the very least, if you're claiming that this is safe, then let's get to the end of trials in 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 years, however long it takes. And then once you've established that it's safe, once you can prove to me, but there is no proof there. There's no evidence there. So, how do we bring all of this together, all of what we've been talking about today, this non-judgment, this letting people have their own reality, with the perception of, being our brother's keeper and being connected to everyone, and seeing that people are maybe in imminent danger of being run over by this thing that looks and sounds like, if you're only listening to certain people, like it's okay, but other people and very knowledgeable scientists are saying no. How do we blend all of that? How do we balance all of that? What is my responsibility to my brother and sister here?
It's yes, and if you're feeling responsible, okay, what is that? It's the ability to respond. So if you're being asked something, you can respond to that. If you're not, but you're feeling someone's being run over, then you reach out and say, hey, can I give you a hand here? They may be no, maybe yes. It's shifting your own consciousness to that unconditional, loving heart space where you're not judging yourself that you're not doing enough. What you choose to do from that heart space, that's perfection. You can't blow that. Whether it's helping or not helping, it's okay. And it's that living in that one space where you are in your truth in that moment. And it may change 5 minutes from then, saying, oh, maybe I could have done this. So if there's an opportunity, you might do it differently next time. But again, holding the energy of separation or judgment or guilt or any of that is not helpful. And it's not true. I was having a similar thought on a different kind of scale, but I wanted to bring this up as part of our chat. I was listening to Zach Bush again the other day, and he's brilliant in how he describes things. And he was talking about, we've all created this. So I'm saying to myself, well, how did I create this? And I'm thinking back, well, I remember when we had a place in a different town and we had a whole bunch of weeds. And, I went down the hardware store and say, I got a bunch of weeds. What do I use? And they say, here's this stuff. And I put it on there and it killed the weeds. And I didn't think about it. He said, just don't get it on your skin. But, I figured, well, if it's going to, any event, it was Roundup. So I'm thinking, I'm holding all this guilt because I'm saying, shit, I probably poisoned the groundwater and the insects there. Oh, sure. I was listening to Zach, who's talking, back hundreds of years before Western medicine came into being. And the pharmaceutical and the drug and the industrial companies, that basically that's been going on for these 150, 200 years. And so in effect, we have all contributed. I go down to Lowe's the other day and I saw cases of Roundup there and people going by and picking up a jug. And I mean, I'm no genius or chemist, but it's been proven they've lost in court around the world. It's killing the water and our soil and our food, our nutrition. And that's what we're made up of. We are that soil. We are that water. We are that food.
Yeah.
And so, okay, I could, go and cry on a cross and nail me because I didn't do enough or I should have. No, you're a conscious heart source being. What is it in this moment that feels true, that's coming from your most expanded loving place, that you respond, not react, respond. What are you responding to? Your ability to respond, okay? That is key. And then you do it without attachment to an outcome. They still may give you the finger,
So,
but you did it from that place. And I think that's the growing edge here for many of us, is to be in comfort, at peace with what we're doing or not doing.
Yeah, and I want to kind of weave this back around to the idea of critical thinking.
Yeah.
And critical thinking being based on the capacity to observe without judgment, and the capacity to observe without judgment being based on the availability of all data to be seen without prejudgment or from outside of the confirmation bias bubble, which is the most difficult thing to do, I would say. And so, we need to be able to see it all and weigh it all. It's data points. And I call myself a possibilarian. And I know that's been used in other contexts, but I think it was just in more in the sense of making sense of the world, which is collecting data points and not having ultimate conclusions on what things are, but based on the best available information, being able to make choices and decisions on that. So I wanted to kind of throw it back on you and just ask, so in the case of knowing that you did Roundup at some point in the past, I know I bought it maybe 20 years ago or 30 years ago,
right,
using it, and then at some point realizing what it was and going, doesn't matter how bad that that weed coming up through my driveway is bothering me, and I have to find a different way to respond here. And so so throwing it back to you, what sort of things, if we're seeing what we're seeing here, in terms of aspects that we've all been participating in, and we've all been participating in this larger context of commerce and corporations and chemicals and pharmaceuticals, and how do we best respond to that, and in my own lives I think it's a little clearer, but how do we best insert ourselves into a conversation about that as we create the new world? Because when I'm listening to Zach, I really get his heart. I really feel where he's coming from, and I feel like there's again this balance point between saying no to these things. We need to say no. We need to point them out, and even from a non-judgmental place. But if something is killing something,
right,
like we know that glyphosate is killing things, and it's killing. And hear Zach talk about it's really killing the soils. It's killing the microbiome, the soil biome, and in so doing, that is actually one of the largest causes of the proliferation of CO2.
And why this COVID or flu or anything else, which is just a little cold virus, is affecting so many people, because people don't recognize what they've put into their body. The water they're drinking, the food they're eating, the chemicals, the pharmaceuticals they're ingesting. Those systems are so fragile.
They're fragile now.
Exactly. And so again, to empower, knowing this, and there is data and information out there if people are willing to take a look. But I think again, that the situation has been created where it's coming right back to meet us. What has been created? What is our role here? How can we begin to heal? And so, the other day, the Green Up Day, it's a wonderful thing here in Vermont. But I went out and I felt so good in my heart because I just went down the little section of Route 7 that we have our land on. I picked up a couple of beer bottles, which I remember as a college kid, the beer can went out the window because you didn't want to get stopped coming back onto campus. And all those memories, I just let that guilt go. Say, hey, you're an unconscious idiot at that time, but it's okay. But I'm picking them up and say, here's my karma. I'm picking up someone else's
Right.
paper, put it in the bag, put it in the recycle. My whole diet has changed over the last number of years. I do not take pharmaceuticals. Yes, I do take some supplements, but not like a drug, because I have my blood tested. I know my balance is off. Try to get rid of the heavy metals. This is something, again, honoring yourself. You start there because you can't really help the planet and everything else if you're so stressed out and fearful and diseased and brain is brain fog and emotionally wired. Please, we got to start with ourselves. So to bring it back around, I think the more we can do things like this, to have a chat, share this with our communities, the people that you're out on the picket line with, and say, hey, did you take a look at this? Let's try a practice before we go out there. We're going to just sit quietly, just for a couple of minutes, put our hands on our heart, take a breath in there, get ourselves really calm and centered. We're doing good in the world. We don't care if anyone else is going to show up here or other people are going to give us the finger, laugh at it, smile at it. It's okay. They're in their place. They're perfectly where they are. Their soul is creating this place because they need to grow. Okay. So it's like watching a flower struggling, give it a little water, it's, they're going to do their thing. It's not your responsibility. Okay. It is your ability to respond, however. And there's a big difference in that.
Yeah.
We're responsible for us, each of us. And we're responsible to respond when something in our heart feels like we can offer something here.
Indeed. And it is the time, I think, for people to be tuning in to their heart's deepest wisdom and be asking themselves, what is, my mission now? What is my calling? What am I being called to do? If I were completely trusting of that call, if I believed in my deepest heart that I was here to make a contribution to the evolution of the species, what is that thing that I'm being called to do? And then kind of settle in, maybe following on that breathing that you were talking about, settle into that and just let what's there emerge on its own rather than,
figuring it out.
It's right. It's not a figuring out thing. Exactly.
Right. Let it come from that intuitive heart space.
Yeah.
And again, no judgment. You cannot blow this because you're coming from this place, which is source itself. There'll be a learning, there'll be a gift, there'll be an opportunity, there'll be a challenge, but it's all fine because you're coming from here.
Yeah.
And I think that could rapidly shift people's experience if they could entertain or consider doing that within their own lives. I think it would make a huge difference in our communities and our ability to create together and to, be in different places, but also work together towards what is true, what's going to help people, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Moving towards the true, the beautiful, the loving, the good.
Yeah.
All of that.
That's why we're here.
Yeah. And that's when the path becomes the destination. Does it not? Because we're not then pushing too far ahead towards an unattainable future, but we are, as much as we can, relaxing into the expression as best as we can embody it in that moment of what we feel that to be in our hearts. So, I think it's highly important for people, kind of as one of my closing thoughts anyways, to get out and be out amongst your friends, be out amongst like-minded people, remind each other of our common humanity, smile, sing, laugh, tell jokes,
dance, whatever,
eat food together, just the usual things that we took for granted a year ago. Maybe it doesn't seem as possible. And then, of course, here in the Northern Hemisphere with everything now coming into bloom, we know that time out in nature, time out to watch the birds, smell the petals on the hydrangea bush or, the budding trees is so healing in and of itself because it relays to us, dimensions of our being As you were saying, we're not just skin encapsulated egos. We are energetic beings, multidimensional beings existing on all of these dimensions simultaneously. It's hard to remind ourselves of that if we're in our head. And if we
Right.
drop down, then we can start to feel it, and then it has a chance to work in us.
So just notice, when you're watching the TV or you're out in town and all of a sudden your thoughts are there and you can feel your body start to get tense. Just take a breath and pause and say, wait a minute, this isn't me. Okay.
Yep.
I'm in reaction to this. What is that?
Yep.
And how do I want to be with it?
Exactly.
Yeah. And you're
Exactly.
free. You are a
Yep.
free sovereign being. You get to choose how you want to be and then create that. It's like plant that flower in your garden. You're
Yep.
planting some seeds here of a whole new way to be in this world, that it's going to flower and there'll become more flowers.
Exactly.
And if you can do that within your families and within your communities, people can feel the difference. I don't know. And this is just, one of those things we used to do is back in grad school. You walk into a room of angry people. What do you feel like? It's like you kind of, it's like, whoa. Or you go into a party room where everyone's smiling and happy. How do you feel? Well, guess what? It's within you to create that experience. And if the rest of the world is unconscious right now and chooses to be in fear, bless them,
Right.
but put out that loving frequency that gives them an opportunity to perhaps say,
Right.
why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Everyone's going to wake up at their own time, and you just have to do your part.
And yeah. And also, while you're doing that, while we're doing that, let's be aware that, the unique situation today may well dip us into our traumas from the past. And as
important
they
to do
it's a great
that healing work.
opportunity. It's a great opportunity to observe those, to love those parts of ourselves, because therein lies a lot of our unowned energy.
That's
Our
the
unowned
fuel for the
consciousness.
mind and the emotional reactions that we end up doing because
Exactly.
those traumas are held within.
Yeah.
And they're not just in your head. It's not
Yeah.
about just ignoring them. They're held in the body. They're
Yeah.
held in the emotional field. And so you can clear that, but
Yeah.
you need to pay attention. Yeah.
Yep. And then just one final thought for me is one of the things that I try to do every night is just think of about 3 different things that I experienced that day that I appreciate. Can be very small things, something I ate, something somebody said to me, some conversation with a friend that I hadn't heard from in a while, or just being outside and watching a squirrel for a bit, whatever it is, before I go to sleep, because that I think helps me just settle down my nervous system as much as I can, and let go of what it is I can't do. And I found that very, very helpful for me. Given everything else is going on these days, it's kind of a good way to just settle into just peace.
Great way to end the day and go into dream time. And I think that's so important what you just shared. I also do my version of that. And the power of gratitude is just profound, what it does to your heart and all those 40,000 cell connections that go throughout your whole system, your body, the mind, everything is affected by that. So having that, getting off the TV set, getting off the cell phone, give yourself some time before you go to bed, to take a walk outside, do the gratitudes like you're talking about. That will make a huge difference in your life day to day, just by doing that simple practice.
Totally. All right. Well, I think this gives us some good food for thought and good way to come back to ourselves.
Yes.
I'm not sure what I'll call this particular episode, but it feels good. I'm ending in a better feeling place than I started. And so I have you to thank in part for that.
And I get so much joy from these. And if we can find that Greg Braden video to maybe put a link below in the podcast.
Send it on. I'll add it to it. And there might have been 1 or 2 other things that we mentioned. But there's plenty of stuff that people just search for Greg Braden. He's always offering a lot of good wisdom into the space for us. And that's the other thing, I used to, be reading all kinds of strange things late at night. And I find that the best thing is find the heart-based stuff for later in the day. Perfect. So that you can start moving towards that harmony. And then, the other stuff will always be there. I mean,
That's right.
it's a never ending, it's a, you know, it's
You
like,
were,
oh no,
if you don't look
fifth,
for it,
my
you'll
fifth
find
email
it.
from John Michael today. Oh no, what, enough. So, and we all have to call it enough at a certain point, don't we?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I seem to be the glutton for punishment. I think maybe, comes from my old Catholic programming, I think. So
Yeah, we share that. But we're healing together. What can we say?
good. Catholic with the small c. That's what I keep telling people. Let's just be universalist here, and use the tools that we know. So thank you so much, Paul, for
Thank you, John Michael.
once
Beautiful
again,
as
for your
always.
sharing, and we'll check in again and see how we're doing with holding the heart space.
You betcha.
All right, you take care.